al Congreso. Buenos días de nuevo y bienvenidos a todos a la ciudad de Granada. Comienza esta 12ª edición del Congreso Nacional de Bibliotecas Públicas, lugares donde, seguro todos los que están aquí saben, se conserva no solamente la memoria, también todo el porvenir y donde la cultura no se acumula, sino que se comparte entre todos, como vamos a hacer durante 2 días aquí en esta ciudad. Organizado por la Dirección
Coordination of libraries in collaboration with the regional governments and the support of the scientific committee. This conference makes Granada a meeting point for professionals from around the world. In the coming days, we're going to comment on cultural rights, media,
rural, desinformación, censura, neurociencia e inteligencia artificial, que también se encuentra instalada entre todos nosotros. Pero sobre todo vamos a hablar.
And we're going to speak about people who support with the everyday work the spaces where it is still possible to have conversations, to have curiosity and hope. Public libraries are one of the main expressions of what's public. They guarantee cultural rights, access to knowledge, and equality of opportunities amongst everyone. This conference, under the motto "Where Culture Becomes Right," invites us to reflect upon the role in the world, a world that changes rapidly, but requires these kind of places where reading, where thinking, where meeting is something very important. First of all, we're going to hear the authorities today, and I want to ask the speakers to join us, the director of the book, comic and reading from the Ministry of Culture. Good morning. And for those of us who haven't met yet, welcome. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to this 12th conference on public libraries. Since 2002, this conference has been organized together with the regional government of Andalusia, and this is going to be held here in the wonderful city of Granada. A wonderful city because it is the conference where more participants we have found. Almost 600 people will be here in these 3 days to dialogue, to discuss, to argue about the different things that are relevant. For many years now, we have said that libraries are there, but they are not seen, that they don't have the social, political relevance that is deserved by them. For several years now, we have been witnessing a change in trend. Finally, libraries are at the forefront of culture. They are of culture, no matter the size of the municipality and no matter the economic abilities of the users. Thank you very much for the work that you do, and this has achieved this success, the fact that libraries are at the forefront as we require. The topic for this year is libraries where culture becomes a right. Since 2002, with the first conference in Valencia, we have touched upon almost everything: memory, digitization, heritage, spaces, infrastructure, services. And we will, of course, speak about bibliographical funds and resources, the dignity of labor conditions, and many other things. But in this conference specifically, we will speak about rights. This year we have showed and introduced, the minister did so a few months ago, we have presented and introduced the labor rights plan. A few weeks in Barcelona we had Mundia Cult, where libraries also had a relevant say. Many of you probably have done the same thing that I did, taking a look at the plan and see what we can find in it about libraries. I know that many of you have worked thoroughly to improve this plan. One of the most relevant ones is the right to participate in the cultural life in conditions of equality. This in great deal is carried out in libraries and thanks to libraries and librarians. But there are many other rights, and we're going to speak about that, cultural rights. Cultural diversity is at the forefront of everything that we do. It is also part of cultural rights. It has to do with accessibility, sustainability. The role that you play is extremely relevant. Generation of spaces, safe spaces for the whole of society. And this has a lot to do with cultural rights. Another aspect that will be touched upon here, and which is a very important right, is the right to information. There are a couple of panels that are extremely relevant and that have to do with this aspect of the right to information, which is censorship. Quite frequently you are being asked as a society that librarians are heroes. In the institutions we have to assume a responsibility to safeguard your work without any kind of pressure, and this will be touched upon as well in the conference. There will be panels devoted to that. Of course, I can't forget mentioning those of you here that have suffered in the events of the floods in Valencia, and you have done your best to maintain the service and to be able to provide the service to the citizens in spite of the situation. I don't want to forget mentioning anybody, but I know that there are many librarians in the areas that have been affected by the floods, from Requena, Valencia, Algemesí, Montserrat, Guadalajara. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here and for keeping up with your work. Thanks a lot. Good job. And I will finish by saying that this is the year when we celebrate the 125th anniversary of María Moliner. We should be guided by her rigor, her perseverance, and her genius all around the conference. We're in Granada, the city of Lorca, and the city of Luis García Montero. And if you allow me, Luis, I will mention a couple of lines of a poem that is for you, for all of you. What can I say about you, my dear friend? I have known you for many years and I live on your side. Thank you very much. Moltes gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. A continuación.
Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to David López, representative of the Regional Government of Andalusia in Granada. Good morning. Welcome to the City of Granada. Welcome to the 12th conference on public libraries that we are delighted to host here in Granada. I speak on behalf of the Regional Government of Andalusia, and of course I thank you for the trust that you bestow upon us. Thank you for organizing this in this wonderful region and this wonderful city. Of course, the regional government thanks you for this, and we thank the presence of the ministry. We have the Vice Secretary of State, the Director General, the Director of the Cervantes Institute, the representative from the government, the Deputy Mayor of the City of Granada, and of course the attendance of all the representatives from all the institutions, from all the administrations that are gathered here today. We also want to thank all the professionals that are with us, taking part in the conference. Thank you for being part of this round table, of these presentations that will be fruitful and that will give access to public libraries that are the cradle and the repository of knowledge. Culture, which is accessible for the citizen, is a source of freedom for the citizen, so that they can have, they can make decisions and be able to develop personally. We are thankful for being appointed as a region to be the headquarters of this conference. I want to thank the professionals, the researchers, the cultural managers, the representatives from the librarianship world. This conference will be a meeting point to share ideas, challenges, experiences, proposals, and I'm sure they will enrich all the participants and they will strengthen a system that is essential for a free society. When libraries enable access to culture, they not only enable access to books and resources, but they also enable access to dignity, equality, and freedom. I would like to highlight the collaboration with the regional government. I want to thank the Library of Andalusia, the documentation centers, the library of the province that have been part of the organizing committee. So we just want to wish you a happy stay in Granada, and hopefully this will be a fruitful conference for all of us, and would highlight the role of the network of public libraries at a national level. Please enjoy this wonderful city of Granada. This further event will also contribute to the international and widespread will of the University of the City of Granada. We are a candidate to a European Capital for Culture, and hopefully we will be successful in this endeavor. Thank you very much once again, and please enjoy the conference and the City of Granada. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. And to finish with this first opening event, we will give the floor to the Secretary of State for Culture of the Ministry. Thank you very much. Bon dia. Good morning. Director General, you have devoted this wonderful point to us. Luis García Montero, dear friend and director of the Cervantes Institute. We will hear him in a minute. David Rodriguez, delegate for tourism, culture and sport of the regional government. Thank you for the welcome, and especially Mr. Pereira, the deputy mayor for culture. This is the best job that you can have, being the deputy mayor for culture in a city that you love. Welcome to this conference on public libraries. I want to welcome you, and apart from the acknowledgements, rather than carrying out a big appraisal of the role of libraries, because then we will repeat things that you know very well, I would prefer to do something different. What I do is that I bring a series of data that are quite relevant. Maria Jose was saying, sometimes we complain saying that libraries don't play a central role in the visibility of the cultural ecosystems in our society. Well, citizens have twisted this trend, and in the last survey on the cultural practices and habits as allocated by the Ministry, reveals that the use of libraries has increased 10% in the last few years. We also see that there is a historical record in the sense of access to library resources, more than 2 digits of growth. We do have reading data that are tremendously amazing. 65% of Spanish citizens say that at least read 1 book a year. Of course, there's room for improvement. That's obvious. What can I say here? This is a room full of readers, of course. But the data have to be contextualized in the growth line or decrease line, and these are very important data. And the most relevant one, there is a cliche saying that young people are connected to the screen and TikTok, etc., and they are the worst readers. However, in this survey, we can see that young people are 5% on top of those who are adults when reading books. So this is very important. Of course, there's room for improvement. But let's be clear here. These positive data involve a series of elements, of instances that have been relevant to achieve these results. But in the top one, number one, no doubt, is public libraries. Publishing houses are important, obviously. The powerful ecosystem, publishing house ecosystem, is also very important. We have more varied access to books, etc. The bookshops are very important. Schools, the educational system are very important as well. But if we did not have these resources that are provided by the libraries, many readers, when they are asked, how did you start reading? I was lucky enough to have a family that loved books, and we had a big library at home, etc. This is what has enabled us to do that. What was a privilege for some time was very important for it. Without it, the data would not be the ones that we are sharing with you. So we have to be satisfied, and we have to say that and confirm that. Obviously, there's 30-something% of citizens that are allergic, apparently, to books, and many others that could read much more than they read, because we know that reading, we develop critical thinking. We have the ability to navigate in more complex societies. We're not doing it because we advocate for our sector as anybody selling any kind of product. We are doing that because we know that the big challenges of society today, this polarization, this wild polarization, this ability to live amongst people that are increasingly more diverse, and this has only one way to follow: critical thinking, interpreting society as we evolve and acting accordingly. And to achieve that, reading is one of the main tools. Maria Jose mentioned that a few weeks ago in Barcelona, a city which is almost as beautiful as Granada, we had the big conference, the big Assembly of Ministers for Culture. And we saw that cultural rights are the paradigm in public policies, and many think that cultural rights are summarized in providing access to culture, and this is an essential dimension in which libraries play a fundamental role. But cultural rights, and that's why they're called cultural rights, do not only mean access, right to access, the right that I have as a Granadine to have access to the cultural legacy of previous generations in Granada, but also this is based upon the ability to intervene, to participate actively in the cultural life of our community. Human beings are not only receptors, and just a few of us that are wise enough to have creativity and genius and talent, etc., are the ones issuing cultural messages and the rest receiving them. No, this is not the case. But the right to be a cultural issuer, we have access to that. All of us do, no matter our capabilities. If we don't build societies where we all have the right to have access to knowledge, but also to participate, to provide our opinion, then we won't have societies that are homogeneous. And of course we have the right to speak. The right to speak and to say whatever we want to say without being afraid of being censored, being excluded from the conversation. Normally, libraries are understood, as I mentioned earlier, as a space that we can have access to, where we can read books. And today, public libraries are based on three rights. It is a space for conversation in the community, where we can collectively have a right to say something, to provide our opinion. There are public libraries that have clubs, that have areas for discussion. They are not only spaces that are a cathedral where we entered almost respectfully and with admiration towards the enormous amount of books that were offered, but they are also areas where we can share in cultural life. And there's also another component that is tremendous in societies. They are the public space that is covered, that is protected. A space that is present between the global world and the domestic space. It is not only our house, a particular house, but our common house with our neighbors. It is a common house. I always tell an anecdote that you might be familiar with. When you have been in your position for more than a year, there is a danger, and this danger is repeating yourself. When I was the deputy mayor of the city of Barcelona for culture, I heard an anecdote, and that was that once in a conversation with the police, we were speaking about security, etc., and how culture would favor integration in the districts that were more controversial and underprivileged. These were the times where the first few waves of immigration had come to our city in Barcelona internationally. Barcelona had an enormous amount of immigration from people coming from every country, sub-Saharan countries, Latin American, Asian ones, many of them, etc. And the police mentioned something relevant. When we stop a group of immigrants on the street to ask for documents or to see what the situation was with them, the only paper that they show, you know what it is? The card for the public library. Honestly, there are just a few times when we are moved by what happens in our job, because we're always looking at goals, objectives, strategies, etc. But there are moments when one becomes emotional, because libraries, I have always been advocating for libraries. It is a public space where we build community, etc. And if they also provide those who come with nothing with a possibility to make maybe be part of this city, it is an enormous potential that what lies behind it. So something that is good for all the professionals working in the libraries is exactly that, the place where we can build inclusive societies, integrated ones, and acknowledging each other, where the other is not the enemy or the adversary, but somebody who is invited to share our common table, which is the public library in a district. I would like to finish by saying that you will always find us there. The ministry, not only now, but traditionally has been one of the ones advocating for the system of public libraries. First of all, with this network of state libraries, that was the first one to foster the networks of libraries around the state, the grants that were given, the rural areas that are something that becomes a source of concern for many of us. This network is all around the Iberian Peninsula, and it is an element to provide deeply rooted connections for underprivileged areas in the rural zones. We, of course, will support libraries in any corner of the country, but always thinking that libraries are not the biggest network for equipment in our country, and we can be proud of it. But probably today, this is the first and main instrument to contribute to societies that are more fair, more full of solidarity, and that are in favor of a life in common, a collective effort. In the whole cultural ecosystem, there are biases that are quite relevant. The profile of the person goes to the opera, to the theater, to a classical music festival, to an independent music festival. They have a special bias of class, of origin, etc. There are also interesting elements in public culture as well. And the only one that the audience is similar to the society around it, is almost identical to what we see when we come out of the library, is the library, the public library. And this becomes a very difficult challenge, and these conferences, these rooms for discussion are essential when reflecting upon the way we can face the challenges. Thank you very much. Have a good conference, and I hope you can enjoy these days here in Granada.
Muchísimas gracias con las intervenciones de las autoridades.
Thank you very much for the comments on the part of the authorities. We therefore open the the 12th conference on public libraries. Now we will hear Luis García Montero, one of the most identifiable voices of contemporary Spanish literature. He is a poet and a full professor of the University of Granada, where he has been director of the Secretariat for Development, and he has been the director of the Cervantes Institute since 2018. As a poet, writer, and writer, he has received the National Award for Literature, the National Award for Critics, the Librarians, the Bookshops of Madrid Award, the Paralelo Cero Award, Montoli Fori di Casa, and Carlos Fuentes Award. He has studied the works of Spanish and Latin American writers, and he's an honorary professor of Mar del Plata in Argentina. And 2017, he was appointed the special citizen of the regional government of Andalusia. And he is Doctor Honoris Causa for several universities around the world. Now I will give the floor to the director, Luis García Montero.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. I hope that I can be close to the skills of the speakers that have spoken previously. And I want to thank the organizers for allowing me to be here in my city, in Granada. and meeting you librarians from around the country. I thank you. I thank the Ministry for Culture, the Regional Government of Andalusia, the delegation of the government, the Town Council of the City of Granada. Thank you for being here, because I believe that Granada is a city that is worth it. And you will all see this by joining this conference. A few months ago, all the members of the libraries of the Cervantes Institute, today we gather here all the librarians around the country, and this is very interesting because, as you mentioned earlier, Granada is a candidate for Cultural Capital of Europe for the year 2031. And I believe that libraries are at the heart of culture. I will try to carry out a few reflections that have to do with this, and since I am here in Granada, in my city, I will tell you about my own life, and from my own life I will try to carry out a few reflections that are relevant from the cultural perspective related to libraries.
I am the oldest brother in a family with 6 siblings, and the sentence that I heard more often when I was a child, it's when they asked her about her children. She said, I have 6 boys. They're all boys, and they were looking for the girl, but they stopped after the 6th boy. My mother studied literature and philosophy, and she married my father, and she stopped studying because her work would be part of the private life and devote to the to taking care of all of her sons. As we were very naughty and we broke everything, we broke the chairs, the tables, we stained the tablecloths, something which is quite common in the families in Granada, would be to close a dining room. That would be a place where we would receive people, for example, a friend or other relatives. So in this dining room, my parents had a small library. And of course, we were not allowed in there. But as we were very naughty, and I was the naughtiest of them, I got into this dining room secretly, and I started to have a look at all those books. And I was lucky enough to find a book which would represent a total change in my life. The full work of Federico García Lorca, published by Aguilar in 1904. Do you remember this collection? These were books that were prepared with leather and these very, very thin paper, Bible paper. And this was a book that seemed to be like sacred. I was lucky enough to open it in some pages that had to do with my age and my own experience. If I had opened it maybe in Poeta in Nueva York, a poet in New York, a book that I have devoted a lot of years as a professor at university, I would have stepped aside. But I opened it with the song of the Los Lagartos, the lizards. They were crying. This poem, the poem about the lizards. And as I had been playing at the banks of the river Genil, this one that we have here, and I devoted my free time to run after lizards and other insects and other animals. So I thought, so what am I doing trying to go and kill them if they have families, if they love each other, if they have so that made me think about my responsibility regarding reality. I remember this book that I found in my parents' library. And I'd like to read a poem which is called Full Works, Obras Completas, that I published in the book A Brief History of the World, and tries to collect this experience, this discovery. When I opened this book in this closed room at my parents' home, under the leather and the signature in gold, I wasn't expecting these words in the arms of time. This was the loneliness of a dark dove, the hurting yellow of the lemon, like a dream in my mouth, the moon in that does never come back, and the sun among the legs of a horse at the beginning of the horizon. With water on my shoulders, I sat down. My body was and covered with silence, and life covered with a poem. I discovered the authority of the imprecise evening, the longest night, and once again been born in 1969. The world was open. It called me on the incomplete promise of a destiny. This is the book that I wanted to remember here, these Obras Completas de Federico García Lorca, this full work of Federico García Lorca that I found there. Culture serves to the building of a trip that goes and comes back between the private and the public, and in that sense these return trips are essential. Years ago we had to vindicate some public rights of public libraries. As Sergi said, these public libraries to make of culture a public asset. And in this world where we're running all the time, it is very convenient to defend the importance of family, of education, of intimacy, and the scope of what's private in this dialogue with society. And this is a way in which we can link citizenship to the public sphere and help politics become something that links our experience to literature, to life. And on that I would like to insist, because I defend the idea of reading as the best metaphor for this social contract in contemporary society. I wrote some reflections on that I'm going to sum up here in a book that I published in 2019. Velero Bergantin. Why am I saying that reading is the best metaphor for our social contract? Because in reading we find individual experiences in a public space, a published also space. This democratic society, from the metaphor of this social contract, tried to articulate the private interests and individual interests lived in diversity in a public space that would assure equal coexistence. These are the illustrated origins of a society that wanted to link the culture of fraternity to coexistence, equality, and the respect to the freedom of consciousness. For that, writing is an act of hospitality. A writer, Ignacio Martínez de Pisón from Aragon, in a memories book, he reminded us or remembered how in a wardrobe of his grandfather he discovered the works by Valle-Inclán, the Carles novels, the Garibaldes de Antaño, and other titles. And when he was reading Valle-Inclán, he was not only interested in the narrative of it, but he became a writer since he was a child, because he saw how important it was to select the different words, how important it was to choose language to evoke certain feelings. I think that in this sense, writing is an act of hospitality. Because if I write a love poem and people say, oh, he's very much in love, he's been very much in love, but then the poem doesn't exist. What it's all about is that a reader will inhabit this poem, and then they will think about not my love, but their love. Joan Margarita, the poet, said, if somebody writes a poem, there it is, but the poet act only exists when the reader is the one that inhabits the poem and makes it theirs. And he or she builds a dialogue, which is a we, coming from different and diverse individual experiences. For example, the person who writes it and the person who reads it. So this sense of hospitality is essential, and it's something that brings all of us together. The people working in the field of books, be it readers, librarians, literature teachers, professors, etc. For very important reasons. When I read Federico García Lorca, I understood that having a job is very important, but it's much more important to have a vocation. So as a reader, I wanted to earn my living as a literature teacher, and getting to the end of the month with a salary is very important, but what's most important is to make your job or to make it into a vocation, because this is a commitment to life. And this defines the people who work in the world of books. And I thank that a lot as a director of the Cervantes Institute, because a good part of my job is to understand how bad the whole thing is with working staff, with the salaries are very limited, with positions and procedures that stop what I would like to have as a shared work, and we find many difficulties. But if people do not end up being fed up, and if librarians, teachers, professors do not burn out, and they continue to be involved in this effort of the Cervantes Institute, then this is because they do not only have a job, they share a vocation. And this is what led me to understand the experience of reading as something where the individual becomes totally linked to the commitment to other people. Victoria Kam has just published a very good book, The Society of Untrust or Mistrust, and this book talks about this lack of trust in the public sphere, because the communication strategies are always saying, you know, everybody's the same, everything's a lie, nothing's important, I don't believe in anything. This is the decomposition of the public, and this is based on an attempt to vindicate this individuality, not as something or a way to defend our own consciousness, but as a way to impose the savage law of the strongest one. So with that, equality will not be something that belongs to society, but it's something that it's imposed. It's the imposition of closed identities. Well, before that, we need to defend freedom, which means the respect of our own consciousness in an equal and respectful coexistence. And I think that reading is the fundamental root to this, and that's why it's very important to take into account what culture can tell us about all of this. And what does culture tell us about all of this? Well, once and again, it tells us that each one of us are what we read. In my case, for example, I have devoted a part of my life to work with the work of Federico García Lorca. I published a work called A Reader Called Federico García Lorca. I saw that Federico García Lorca thought that he was what he had been reading from the memories of his brother Francisco in a book, Federico and His World. I understood that the modernity of Lorca was due to the reading of Rosalía de Castro, Rubén Darío, Shakespeare, popular romances, Victor Hugo, and other writers. Because individuality is not a way to break the collective sense, but it's a way of inhabit the scope of the collective and the common rights. And in this sense, it's how I think that we need to highlight the importance of the hospitality of this reading, the importance of the book that's been discovered, and the importance that libraries have as a space that configurates a collective experience, a sense of we. At home, we did not only have Federico García Lorca, we also had Galdós, Lope de Vega, Calderón de la Barca, Unamuno, and I learned that a library was a space that had meaning beyond my own family life. And I insist in this. The experience of the individual is only understandable if we relate it to a shared experience in relation to what is collective. And secondly, time is not something that you can use and throw away, and we live in a world in which everything is mercantilized, and even the main concepts are meant into this merchandise. The instant is sacred. We're going to lie. Well, it doesn't matter. Tomorrow we're going to have 1,500 points of information that will cover my lie. But in the face of all of this, there is a way to understand time. And this is as a shared human experience in which the heritage that we receive will teach us to interpret the present with our own consciousness and to imagine a future in a shared illusion. And this is also at the root of the libraries. This is a step of the time that allows us to understand what's collective in the human being, the inheritance that are worth receiving, to work with and for the future with these shared experiences. And this is the sense of writing, a sense that means that writing and reading are inseparable from history. From my parents' home, I went into the Escolapios library. There was a library there, and I started to work as a kind of an assistant. And I worked there since I was very young. From the 60s, I went to this school, Escolapios, and I went to the cinema there. And one of the teachers there is when there was an intimate story in a film about the Western film, and then there was a cowboy that would kiss a woman in the village. They would put some kind of folder before the screen so that we couldn't see the kiss. And I have to say that in this library of the school, Escolapios, and some of the books that I bought afterwards in this school and that were related to my previous readings, I have to say that I learned about the meaning of kisses. And in that sense, knowledge is not something that makes you feel stagnant. It is a possibility to open your eyes to things that should be learned and should be remembered. For example, in Meditación Roma from Federico García Lorca, there is a boy that becomes conscious about the secret under the pillow, homosexuality. And before that, and the possibilities of war and hatred speeches, and before the need to think about a different world, then he says, love, 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 love. Because we have the will, we want to have the will of the earth, which is offering its fruits to everybody. It is very important to open our eyes before the books that can teach us to understand something that somebody wants to cover, placing a folder before a screen. And in that sense, I think it's very important to know that literature is inseparable from history. Irene Vallejo, in its essay El infinito en un junco, talks, for example, about two words that are linked together, memory and hope. And this is possible in society if we take culture seriously. Sergio Martin reminded us how important Mundiacul has been in Barcelona, a city where I feel like at home, same as what happens in Granada. In this sense, the reflections that many people have done regarding culture is that culture is a fundamental objective, a fundamental route to sustain a fair development and a shared development and evolution. And in that sense, it is important to acknowledge the role of libraries in the heart of culture. And as we've seen, these are not the containers of memory. These are spaces for activism, as we can prove day by day in Cervantes Institute. We have a program of Cervantitos, which is like little Cervantes. And this is a program that's willing to welcome kids, immigrant kids, or the kids of people who are at risk of losing Spanish language as a language of reference. So that generation after generation we can keep this in this heritage of the language, but also we can learn to think about love as something fundamental, as freedom as something fundamental in democratic values, and something that we should be sharing. The best way to continue to keep the past is to make our spaces into activism spaces. And I think that libraries are a great example for this. Those of us who think that culture is an essential asset in our democratic society, and those of us who think that this Universal Declaration of Human Rights did really well, stating that every person has a right to take part in the cultural life of the community, we think that libraries are in the heart of democracy. And these are institutions that are very close to citizenship. They guarantee the equal access to knowledge, to the social contract of reading, to shared individuality with the shared illusions as well. And that's why these are activism spheres where we also have things like reading clubs and workshops, different projects. Projects, for example, that take a library which is close to the river Ebro to create a knowledge space so that people can know about what it means to have this river, or those who live in Granada, for example, to remember who was Federico García Lorca and what situations were lived in the year 1936. That's why I support the commitment with the libraries in this cultural rights plan, passed in 2025 in July. So I am convinced, and I, working as a director of the Cervantes Institute, I have also seen that there is no a greater asset than investment in culture. Investment in culture means to receive the heritage from the past and open renovation paths towards the future. The Cervantes Institute has a network of more than 70 libraries around the world. We try to have Spanish speakers meeting as a library as if they were at home. And for that, more than just having the works of Antonio Machado or Federico García Lorca, we are making efforts to facilitate the self-loan, to participate in the culture of the digital world, to take advantage of the new paths that society brings. I repeat with some pride the title of one of the courses that was started by the Library and Culture Direction of Instituto Cervantes. Digital competence for the building of a critical thinking, artificial intelligence for the management of information and misinformation, and other keys for the society of knowledge. And in this sense, libraries are fundamental, and the work of librarians as culture activists is essential when we give life to this knowledge, these platforms of knowledge, and when acting as mediators, cultural mediators, and people that are able to use the tools to open new paths, new ways, and be conscious of the different possibilities, so that culture becomes a way to take care of each other. Now we're coexisting with artificial intelligence, and we're constantly working in that. And that's why I wanted to bring here the book of Ethics and Technology of Artificial Intelligence by Adela Cortina, which was published last year. And in the conference on language that took place in Arequipa, one of the works of Instituto Cervantes was fake news, was called Fake News, The Power of Lies. Because when we talk about this artificial intelligence and social media and social networks, one remembers, coming back to our origins, a teaching that Antonio Machado offered to his disciples in Juan de Mairena, when he said to them, be careful, because the real freedom is not only in saying what we think, it's also in being able to think about what we say. So not just saying what we think, but thinking what we say. This was written during the period of the Republic, and many years later, in this society of networks and lies and manipulation of opinion and truth, I like to remember the title of a book by Juan Villoro, the Mexican writer, I Am Not a Robot. No soy un robot. Why? Because sometimes machines want to talk like human beings, but sometimes human beings want to become robots, or those who are working with this want to do that so that the interests are shared. So a vaccination against manipulation, the best type of vaccination, is being the owners of our own consciousness. And we can be free when we say what we think, but also when we think about what we are going to say. And this is very much linked to the power of reading and what this social contract metaphor represents when it becomes a public space in the different libraries. For this reason, I think that it is essential, the work
en los
in which we try to keep the debate of for modernization of society. Our network in Instituto Cervantes offers right now an access to more than 1,300,000 documents, and we're working with the digitalization of it because it is important to have digital collections, e-libraries, together with the first editions that we still keep by Don Andrés Bello, Nebrija, or Federico García Lorca in our library. And to finish, I'm going to talk about time again, and I'm going to give an answer to the world of today through a memory. A friend of mine, Antonio Jiménez Millán, who died in January this year, was the son of a librarian who worked at the University of Granada. And as a child, when there was no school, her mother would take him to the Palace of the Columns, el Palacio de las Columnas, where we had the Faculty of Philosophy. And there he would see her mother work in the library on a table full of books. Sometime later, he got into university, he became a professor. He wrote a thesis on Rafael Alberti, and when he was searching for his research in the files of the university, he found these the letters of the writing of her mother that he had seen when she was working in the 60s behind the glass of this Palacio de las Columnas, and he wrote a poem which was called From an Old Library, and I remember some verses. I was waiting for her to finish her work every afternoon, always there at the bottom of a room with dim light, books in piles on a table, armies of shadows that were prepared for an unpredictable order. Who would tell me that these very clear writing that was repeated on a yellowish piece of board after so many years would be a way of wonder, the writing of the past that talks to me from the bottom of myself. The meeting with the writing of her mother made her relieve her work at the library as an act of intimacy. And I think that the work of these librarians and the ones that I've been able to talk to throughout my life as a student, as a professor, and now as a director of the Cervantes Institute, in its order and in its proposal, it has helped us as readers to continue to inhabit libraries as a space of intimacy, something linked to us as the family library of our parents' homes. So I would like to finish reading a love poem that is entitled Particular Dwelling or Domicilio Particular that I wrote in the year 2003, published in the book The Intimacy of the Snake, La Intimidad de la Serpiente. This is a love poem to a library, and it's the best way to finish my speech, telling you about my own life, which is inseparable from the life of books and the life of libraries. Particular domicile or dwelling. When I came back home, when the light has become an echo after an unbearable day, time and her are like a property, a private property. I needed to know that she was waiting for me. Hearing my steps, my cold steps when coming up, opening the door as you would open a dictionary so that everything occupies its destiny, kisses me on the lips. The reign of solitude, the perfect, nearly perfect room on the other side of the days, a very hospitable way of taking up my coat and caressing the dry leaves of my voice, the trait of the streets on my shoulders, the bad evenings and the tiredness. Then she opens the light as enigmatic as the skin that has deciphered the running of the years. I prepare a drink. She prepares a drink and puts it on the table next to a favorite armchair so that it is undone in the silence and it comes with the rumor of histories. The unprecise liquor that mixes words with imagination. Only smoke and tears can bring things together, and in this smoke the peaceful memories of those nights of uneasiness, this uneasiness in a time that is shared. The memories of nights mixed with days, nights that are supported by the first instinct of adventure, the urgency of feeling and understanding everything, the nervous desire or promiscuity with its enlightenment, and humiliations that were searching at the border of the heart, a principle of order and consciousness. Lie for a lie, loyalty for a loyalty, love accepted to change its state. It looked from a shadow, the state of stillness of the fire, and it searched for the company and the exact knowledge of strengths and weaknesses, the infinite mystery of repetitions, and the final habit of a chosen light, the negotiated pact by the tranquility of an armchair, and the body that becomes older with the youth-related shine in the eyes. And it's not true. Life doesn't only go with enthusiasm of youth and the pleasures of intelligence, but there are respectable hugs in the hand that is searching for a caress. Now your care is defending me. I'm going to be a coward, prudent if I take a risk. I rest in you, in your wonder, in your old loyalty. Library. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.